Hello, my dear students. Welcome to the next class of literary theory. Today, we are starting with psychoanalytic criticism. It was emerged in the 1960s and it became one of the most influential theory in the post-war period. Today, we will move into an introduction about psychoanalytic criticism and unconscious. Let's get started. We are going to learn psychoanalytic criticism today. It is the literary theory which got influenced by the tradition of psychoanalysis, which was begun by Sigmund Freud. So, today we will move into an introduction about psychoanalytic criticism and unconscious. Literary theory, its method, influenced by psychoanalysis, its concept influenced by psychoanalysis, and the psychoanalytic criticism. What does it do? It adopts the method of reading that was employed by Freud. They interpreted the text. While they interpret the text, they look into the concealed desires which was expressed by the character. It argues that literary texts were like dreams. Literary text, the novel in front of us or the poem in front of us, are like dreams. Those literary texts actually expresses the secret unconscious desires and anxiety of the author. What does the psychoanalytic critics say? They say that literary texts are like dreams and it expresses secret unconscious desires of the author. ഡ്രീംസിൽ സൈക്കോഅനാലിറ്റിക് ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിൽ ഫ്രോയിഡ് പറയുന്നത് ഡ്രീംസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമ്മുടെ അൺകോൺഷ്യസിൽ ഉണ്ടാവുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു റിഫ്ലക്ഷൻ ആണെന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. അൺകോൺഷ്യസിൽ ഹിഡൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ നമുക്ക് കോൺഷ്യസ് മൈൻഡിലേക്ക് അത് കാണാൻ പറ്റില്ല. പക്ഷേ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് മൈൻഡിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങളുടെ റിഫ്ലക്ഷനാണ് നമ്മൾ ഡ്രീംസിൽ കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. And psychoanalytic critics also say that literary texts are also like dreams, and literary text, that means novels or poems, express the secret desires and anxieties of the author. A literary work is a manifestation of the author's own unconscious. When you read a work, you will get to know the author's unconscious, the hidden detailing. Earlier people believed in reality and truth. That what is presented before you, that is the truth. What you see in a person in his conscious behavior, that is the truth. But psychoanalyst says that is not truth. Truth, the unconscious that lies beneath your conscious mind. And this notion actually problematized everything. Every notion of reality and truth got problematized by this notion. A particular character can be studied in a literary work, but every characters are also the projections of the author's own psyche. That is said by psychoanalytic critics. The author's childhood traumas, author's family life, sexual conflicts, fixations, all things are traceable within the behavior of the characters in the literary work. ഇതിൻ്റെ ഒരു വലിയൊരു ഇതായിട്ടാണ് പറയുന്നത് ഷേക്സ്പിയറിൻ്റെ ഹാംലെറ്റ്. അതിൽ ഹാംലെറ്റിൻ്റെ ക്യാരക്ടറിൻ്റെ സ്റ്റഡിയിൽ നിന്നാണ് ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ സൈക്കോഅനാലിറ്റിക് ക്രിറ്റിക്കായ ഫ്രോയിഡ് തന്നെ മുമ്പോട്ട് കൊണ്ടുവന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. We'll look into that when we study Freud. So now we'll look into psychoanalytic criticism. So remember these points: psychoanalytic criticisms, the method of reading employed by Freud, and through the text you will be understanding the author's psyche, or the text itself is the manifestation of author's own unconscious. Despite the importance of the author here, psychoanalytic criticism is not concerning itself with what the author intended, but what the author never intended is sought. Psychoanalytic critics were not interested in the author's intention when he was writing the work. Each author would have his own intentions when he was writing the work, but psychoanalytic critics did not look into that, did not look into the author's intention, but they were looking into what the author never intended. They were looking into the repressed desires of the author in the work. From the work, they were trying to identify the psyche of the author. The object of psychoanalytic literary criticism, at its very simplest, can be the psychoanalysis of the author. Psychoanalytic critics, what did they do? They studied, or they attempted the psychoanalysis of the author, or they attempted the particular psychoanalysis of a character in a fictional work. Freud did a psychoanalysis of Shakespearean character Hamlet. We will go into details later. And the psychoanalytic critics understands the unconscious. Unconscious as the source and reason for human thought and behavior. Unconscious is hidden. Only conscious mind is projected outwards. Unconscious is hidden. And unconscious is reflected in our dreams. We may find our dreams are fragmented. We cannot take the meaning out of that. We may find that our dreams are fragmented. It is the reflection of the unconscious, as per the psychoanalytic theory. Critics may view the fictional characters, the characters in the fiction, as psychological case studies. We can do psychological case studies of the fictional characters. And the critics try to identify some Freudian concepts in those characters. They try to find out Oedipus complex. That was what Freud did with Shakespeare's Hamlet. And with the critics also try to identify Freudian slips, id, ego, superego in the fictional characters. And the critics demonstrate how these things influence, that is the Oedipus complex or Freudian slips or id, ego, superego, all these things influence the behavior of fictional characters. Don't worry, we are going into details of Freudian slips, id, ego, superego when we study Freud. Psychoanalytic criticism emerged in the 1960s and it became the most influential interpretive theory in the post-war period. Many theories emerged and this became the most influential interpretive theory. It is based on the psychoanalytic criticism, it's based on the workings of the mind, how the psyche works, how the mind works. And also it is based on sexuality instincts. It was developed by 19th century intellect Sigmund Freud. And Freud, along with Marx, Darwin and Nietzsche, they subverted the center idea of Western society. They subverted the center idea of Western society by boiling down the human individuality into an animalistic sex drive, human individuality into the interest in sexual activity. He proposed his theoretical work, the notion of the unconscious mind, and his concepts like id, ego, superego, etc. through his theoretical works. And psychoanalytic criticism explores language of the unconscious, of the repressed and the hidden that can be found in literary or cultural text such as fiction or art. And its particular attention to the repression of sexuality and the desires. Studying the sexuality, studying the repressed desires. Psychoanalytic criticism identifies or studies the language of unconscious. They study the psyche, and they study the psyche of the author or a particular character, and they gave their attention to sexuality and the desires, the hidden desires, the secret desires. The stream of criticism, psychoanalytic criticism, has become one of the most exciting and challenging areas of literary and culture studies nowadays. The psychoanalytic criticism shows the author's psyche as revealed through language or image of his or her work. Psychoanalytic critics were trying to find out the author's psyche, the subject of the author. The relationship between psychoanalysis and literary criticism, and it spans much of the 20th century, is concerned with the articulation of sexuality in language. They were interested in the articulation of sexuality in language, how the desire was expressed through the language, how the sexuality was expressed through the language. The beginnings of this modern tradition are found in Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams, which was published in the year 1900. Since the 1970s, the theories of Jacques Lacan, another famous psychoanalyst, have inspired a new school of psychoanalytic critics. And he illustrated the laws of desire, laws of unconscious desire, through a focus upon the language of literary text. He focused on the language, he focused on the written words of literary text, and he found out the desires, the laws of unconscious desires. Jacques Lacan is also a major figure in psychoanalytic studies. In Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, unconscious mind is defined as a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are outside of conscious awareness. Unconscious mind is a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, and urges and memories. But conscious mind is not aware of those things. Unconscious, his study of unconscious. Within this understanding, most of the contents of the unconscious are considered unacceptable or unpleasant. It is repressed. Repressed desires are there in unconscious mind. The contents of the unconscious are considered unacceptable to the conscious mind, or considered to be unpleasant to the conscious mind. Certain pain, anxiety, conflict, secret desires are there in unconscious, which are outside of conscious awareness. Freud believed that the unconscious continues to influence behavior, even though it is outside of our conscious awareness. It continues to influence the behavior of our conscious behavior. People are unaware of this influences, unconscious influences, but it is the truth. When Freud conceptualized the unconscious mind, he compared mind to an iceberg. Everything above the water represents conscious awareness, while everything below the water represents the unconscious. See, ഐസ്ബർഗ്സിൻ്റെ കാര്യം എന്താ പറയുന്നത്, കുറച്ച് മാത്രമാണ് അത് വെള്ളത്തിൻ്റെ പുറത്ത് പ്രൊജക്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത് നിൽക്കുന്നത്, അതിനേക്കാളും ഇരട്ടിയുടെ വലിപ്പമാണ് അതിന് വെള്ളത്തിൻ്റെ അടിയിലുള്ളത്. അതുപോലെയാണ് മൈൻഡ് എന്നാണ് ഫ്രോയിഡ് പറയുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് എവറിത്തിങ് അബവ് ദ വാട്ടർ represents conscious, which is not so vast, but everything below the water represents unconscious. It is very vast and very deep. We have seen the picture of iceberg. Only a small part of the iceberg is actually visible above the water.
What you cannot see from the surface is the enormous amount of ice that makes up the bulk of the iceberg. And iceberg, the bulk of the iceberg is submerged deep below in the water. The things that represent our conscious awareness that comes into our mind are simply the tip of the iceberg. In our conscious awareness, the memories in our conscious awareness, the actions of our conscious awareness are simply the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the information is that is outside of conscious awareness, lies below the surface. ബാക്കി എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങളും നമ്മളുടെ പെയിനും നമ്മളുടെ മെമ്മറീസും നമ്മളുടെ ഡിസയേഴ്സും എല്ലാം ഈ ഒരു വാസ്റ്റ്നെസ്സിലാണ് ഉള്ളത്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ബിലോ ദ സർഫസ്. ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് വെരി വെരി ബിഗ്. വൈൽ ദിസ് ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ മൈറ്റ് നോട്ട് ബി ആക്സസിബിൾ കോൺഷ്യസ്ലി, നമുക്ക് കോൺഷ്യസ് ആയിട്ടിരിക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത് ചിലപ്പോൾ നമുക്കതൊന്നും റിട്രീവ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. നമ്മുടെ അൺകോൺഷ്യസിലുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ പെട്ടെന്ന് നമുക്ക് റിട്രീവ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. ബട്ട് ഇറ്റ് ഹാസ് ഡീപ്പ് ഇൻഫ്ലുവൻസ് ഓവർ അവർ കറണ്ട് ബിഹേവിയർ. That's the power of unconscious. It influences our current behavior, but even though it cannot be retrieved by the conscious mind. Freud believed that many of our feelings, many of the desires, many of the emotions, the repressed one, which are taboos, held out of awareness, maybe because they are simply too threatening. Many desires, many feelings are repressed in our unconscious. Freud believed that sometimes these hidden desires in our unconscious, these hidden desires or these hidden fears or hidden emotions make themselves known through dreams and slips of the tongue, says Freud. And see the picture of iceberg. The above iceberg, that is above the surface of water, that is our conscious mind. And it is the conscious awareness, the feelings that comes through our mind, the present feelings or the memories you have, all those things you can retrieve in the conscious mind are like this, which is above the iceberg, that is above the water level. And see the iceberg, its vastness below the water. It is very big, right? It is very deep, it is very big. Our unconscious is also like this, very deep, very big. We cannot retrieve the informations, we cannot retrieve the hidden repressed things in our unconscious, in our conscious mind, but it has a serious influence in our current behavior. Freud also believed that all our basic instincts and urges, the basic instincts, life and death instincts, are contained in the unconscious mind. The sexual instincts or the aggression, trauma, danger, all these things are in our unconscious mind. But these things are kept out of consciousness because our conscious mind views certain urges and instincts as unacceptable or irrational. അത് കാരണം തന്നെ അൺആക്സെപ്റ്റബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറേ ഇൻസ്റ്റിങ്സ് നമ്മുടെ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് മൈൻഡിൽ പോയിട്ട് റിപ്രസ് ഡിസയേഴ്സ് ആയിട്ടായിരിക്കും കിടക്കുന്നത്. കോൺഷ്യസ് മൈൻഡിന് അത് ഇറാഷണലാണ് ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് ഡയറക്ട്ലി ഗോസ് ടു ദി അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് മൈൻഡ് ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് സ്റ്റേസ് ദെയർ ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് സംടൈംസ് റിഫ്ലെക്റ്റഡ് ഇൻ ടേംസ് ഓഫ് ഡ്രീംസ് ഓർ it gets reflected in the slips of tongue as per Freud. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ എൻ്റെ ഒരു ഫ്രണ്ടിന് ആളുടെ ഹസ്ബൻഡിന് ഭയങ്കര പേടിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ എപ്പോഴും ആളുടെ കയ്യിൽ നിന്ന് ഗ്ലാസ് താഴെ വീണ് പൊട്ടും. ഒരുപാട് ഗ്ലാസ് അങ്ങനെ പൊട്ടിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അത് ആക്ച്വലി ചിലപ്പോൾ ഉള്ളിലുള്ള ഒരു വലിയ ഇൻസ്റ്റിങ്ക്റ്റ് ആയിരിക്കും പുറത്തേക്ക് വരുന്നത്. ഗ്ലാസ് പൊട്ടിക്കുന്ന വഴി മേ ബി ഹസ്ബൻഡിനോടുള്ള ദേഷ്യമായിരിക്കാം അങ്ങനെ പുറത്തേക്ക് അതുപോലെ അങ്ങനെ വരുന്നത്. ഗ്ലാസ് മനഃപൂർവ്വം പൊട്ടിക്കുന്നതല്ല, കയ്യിൽ നിന്ന് പെട്ടെന്ന് സ്ലിപ്പായിട്ട് പൊട്ടിപ്പോകുന്നതാണ്. മേ ബി ദേഷ്യം എക്സ്പ്രസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതായിരിക്കാം, അൺകോൺഷ്യസ്ലി ആ ഒരു ദേഷ്യം എക്സ്പ്രസ് ആയിട്ട് വരുന്നതായിരിക്കാം. Maybe we can interpret all these things like that. It is the unconscious urge, an aggression towards that particular person. So unconscious mind may find certain urges are unacceptable and irrational, and it directly goes to the unconscious mind and it stays there. Freud also suggested that dreams were another route to the unconscious. While information from the unconscious mind may sometimes appear in dreams, ഡ്രീംസ് മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നത് വഴി, ഡ്രീംസ് അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് വഴി നമുക്ക് നമ്മുടെ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് എന്താണെന്ന് പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റും. ആൻഡ് ഹീ ബിലീവ് ദാറ്റ് ഇറ്റ് വാസ് ഓഫൻ ഇൻ എ ഡിസ്കൈസ്ഡ് ഫോം. പല ഡ്രീംസും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ആവില്ല, അതുപോലെ അതിൽ നിന്ന് അത് ചിലപ്പോൾ ഒരു സിമ്പിളായിരിക്കാം, ആ ഡ്രീമിൽ കാണിക്കുന്നത് ഒരു സിമ്പിളായിരിക്കാം, അതിൽ നിന്നാണ് ഒരു ഹിഡൻ മീനിങ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് എന്താണെന്ന് പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. As such, from Freud's point of view, dream interpretation would require examining the literal content of a dream. Examining the literal content of a dream. നമ്മൾ ഡ്രീമിൽ കാണുന്നത് എന്തോ അതിനെ വിളിച്ചത് മാനിഫെസ്റ്റ് കോണ്ടൻറ്റ് എന്നാണ്. ആൻഡ് ട്രൈ ടു അൺകവർ ദ ഹിഡൻ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് മീനിങ് ഓഫ് ദ ഡ്രീം. ആ ഡ്രീം വഴി അതിലുള്ള ഹിഡൻ ആയിട്ടുള്ള മീനിങ് എന്താണോ അതിനെയാണ് ലേറ്റൻറ്റ് കോണ്ടൻറ്റ് എന്ന് ഫ്രോയിഡ് വിളിച്ചത്. സോ 2 terms, മാനിഫെസ്റ്റ് കോണ്ടൻറ്റ്, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ ലിറ്ററൽ കോണ്ടൻറ്റ് ഓഫ് എ ഡ്രീം. ഡയറക്റ്റ്ലി നമ്മൾ എന്താണോ ഡ്രീമിൽ കാണുന്നത്, ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് ദ മാനിഫെസ്റ്റ് കോണ്ടൻറ്റ്, ആൻഡ് ദ ലേറ്റൻറ്റ് കോണ്ടൻറ്റ് മീൻസ് ദ ഹിഡൻ അൺകോൺഷ്യസ് മീനിങ് ഓഫ് ദ ഡ്രീം. അപ്പോൾ ഡ്രീം ഇൻ്റർപ്രിട്ടേഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് എക്സാമിനിങ് ദ ലിറ്ററൽ കോണ്ടൻറ്റ് ആൻഡ് ഓൾസോ ട്രൈങ് ടു ഫൈൻഡ് ഔട്ട് the unconscious meaning of that dream. Freud also believed that dreams were a form of wish fulfillment because these unconscious urges could not be expressed in waking life. He believed they find expression in dreams. Unconscious desires, repressed desires can be found in the dreams. While Sigmund Freud did not invent the concept of unconscious mind, he popularized it to the point that it is now largely associated with his psychoanalytic theories. The idea that there are forces outside of conscious awareness has existed for thousands of years. The term unconscious was first coined by the philosopher Friedrich Schelling in the late 18th century. The notion of the unconscious continues to play a role in modern psychology also, and the researchers strive to understand how the mind operates outside of conscious awareness. Our mind is so deep and vast, it should be studied. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung also believed that unconscious played an important role in shaping personality. However, he believed that there was a personal unconscious that consisted of an individual's suppressed or forgotten memories. That is a personal unconscious. And also, he referred collective unconscious. That is, collective unconscious contains the inherited ancestral memories common to all of humankind. The common memories of humankind, inherited one, the common unconscious, collective unconscious. So that's all about the unconscious, and tomorrow we will start with Freud and his concepts. Thank you.